Okay, let's move on to our next talk, which is given by Tracy Arndt, who has been responsible for the linked data service of the German National Library since 2021. And in her talk, she will be describing a somewhat similar endeavor to that of the Internet Archive, which is how to operate a web archive and then make it available as linked open data when the contents of the web are turning out to be quite complex to describe with classical bibliographic standards, so that the task requires its own suitable data model. Are we set? So, Tracy, you can share your screen if you have slides and then take it away. You're still muted.
So I'm ready.
Perfect.
So I have to wait, or
I think you can start.
okay. So yes, hello everyone. My name is Tracy Arndt, and I am the one in charge of the linked data service here at the German National Library. My colleague Natanael Arndt and I have been working together on a project, and we're excited to share our ideas on an RDF data model for our web archive at the German National Library here today. First, I will talk about what motivated us to team up and how we came to be working together. And after a quick overview of web archiving, I will share some of the challenges we've faced and the reasons why we believe RDF is a great solution. Then we will take a quick peek at the vocabularies we already have and present our metadata model WASH. Finally, I will give an outlook on our next steps. So since 2012, the German National Library has been operating a web archive in collaboration with an external service provider. In recent years, a decision was made to transition from the utilization of closed source software to an in-house open source alternative. Since the beginning of 2024, efforts have been made augmented in this regard and prompting the consideration of whatever substantial modifications to the existing data flow and data model are necessary. Given that the subject under consideration is a highly interlinked resource, the logical approach is to store and process it in a linked data format. And we've also got some experience with linked data. Since 2010, we've been happy to make our bibliographic and authoritative data available as RDF under CC0 license. And I just wanted to let you know, in case you didn't know, that we've had a high performance SPARQ endpoint since September this year. So now I'd like to take a moment to gently introduce the unique aspects of web archiving and the terminology, resources, and workflows we're exploring here. Web archiving is a process that preserves parts of the World Wide Web so that we can all access and use them in the future. So far, so good. First of all, it's important to understand the differences between website and web page. We all know that sometimes in everyday conversation that these terms get mixed up and it's not always clear what's being discussed. A website is made up of lots of digital resources that are offered under a single domain name, like example.org on this side. And web pages, on the other hand, are like individual documents, usually made with HTML, and you can find them using a special web address, like the About page. While all web archives agree on the terms website and web page, there are some concepts and resources for which there is no consensus on the definition or the correct term. For example, a resource at a specific point in time may have different terms. Here at the German National Library, we often use the term snapshot. Other archives referred to as a capture, maybe, which is a similar concept. When we automatically search the web and save resources that we find, we call that a web crawl or a harvest. And now I would like to share two important standards from the field of web archiving, namely WARC, and this is a standardized container format for archiving HTTP transactions, and it's like a giant bucket with billions and billions of individual but potentially interlinked files. And CDX is a compact row-based index that stores the most important metadata like URL, timestamp, MIME type, HTTP status, and so on. And this is for each archived web object. And the workflow of web archiving can be simplified as follows. The process begins with crawling the web. Our crawler starts with a list of websites known as seed URLs. It goes through the websites, follows the links, and discovers other websites. This process is called crawling. The crawler is essential to the archiving process. It is responsible for downloading and storing the content of websites. The WARC file, this is the collected data is not simply stored. Instead, it's stored in a standardized file called the WARC file. And this file is the container for the archived web resources. And the WARC file stores individual web resources as the WARC records. And this structure allows us to access and reproduce individual web pages or resources in a targeted manner. This is what we do here on the library page. Here, web pages are reconstructed for display, for example, in the reading room. And we do not present exact copies of the live web. This is because often not all components of the websites are archived in full, or errors occur during the harvesting process. So this overview makes the issue sound simple, but there's a clear disconnection between the web and the library. What do I mean with that? This disconnect affects various levels and has different effects. At the German National Library, the data is stored in different formats and different systems. Attempts are underway to force websites into the same categories and cataloging practices as traditional library media like series or periodicals. And we export the bibliographic data of the web archive along with all other resources. And however, the complexity of the resource has not been taken into account here either. All in all, the web archive is not easy to search. It is easier to find a book from 1924 than a website from 2014. So how do we deal with this break? We are hoping to use RDF to sort this out. Then the data can still be distributed, which would be no problem with RDF. So this is our idea. A centralized or distributed graph, so mainly data available as RDF, will support the entire web archiving process at the library. The graph should be used in the harvest definition. This definition clearly describes what we want to archive. This includes the selection of seed URLs, for example, the starting points for our crawler. So the crawler takes these seed URLs and searches the web by following links and downloading the content, as I mentioned before. And before the data is stored for long term, it undergoes quality control. We check the integrity of the data, validate the content, and create bibliographic descriptions. The checked data is then stored in a repository designed for long-term preservation. Here, the data is stored securely and made accessible for the future. And the graph would also better provide the metadata search. At the same time, the data is made available for searching the bibliographic data in the library catalog. So the graph also allows access to the data needed to reproduce the archived web pages as they appeared on the web at a specific point in time, so the playback part. So that's all well and good, but we still need a metadata model or schema for that. We wondered if anyone had ever done that before. However, the world of web archives is somewhat more diverse and above all younger than the world of libraries, for example. Web archives can be operated by a wide variety of institutions, which means that requirements and circumstances vary greatly. Standards now exist at a technical level, but on the data model, not. So data schema and format widely vary in practice. And so far, no one is using RDF to structure their web archive, as far as we know. If anyone here knows anything about this, please feel free to write in the chat or afterward by an email. We would be delighted to hear from you. However, there's a recent development from the National Archives UK, which has converted the WARC standard to RDF. This helps us a lot as we can build up on it and are already in contact with them to connect to it. So we looked at which vocabularies might be suitable for this purpose, so for our data schema and model, in order to ensure interoperability with other web archives that do not originate from the library world. It was important to us to reuse as many elements from the core and web-specific space as possible. However, we can certainly fall back on some elements for information specific to libraries and archives. When we started, I had some hope that we would also be able to use BibFrame, but it turned out that BibFrame is not ready yet for such a resource. BibFrame for web archiving is a challenge as the BibFrame standard is designed for library-centric resources like books and music, and web archiving involves dynamic, complex content like websites, as I mentioned. But efforts are underway to extend the BibFrame model to handle non-book materials such as performed music, art, objects, and other materials. So this could include extending it further to handle web-based resources in the future. So, and DOVAG refers to premise and ORE. So we looked at these as well, but for our purpose, it is sufficient to work with DOVAG for now. So in the end, we decided on the first version of our metadata model for the marked vocabularies. So we found everything we needed in these vocabularies for our use case. So we didn't have to reinvent anything. We just had to put it into a meaningful model. And this is what came out of it. We call it WASH, Web Archive Shapes and Schemas. And our aims are to enhance the discoverability and visibility of the Web Archive in-house inside the German National Library at first, to support the in-house Web Archive data flow, to increase interoperability of Web Archive data in the future, and to support the interlinking with the Web of Data. So let's have a look. So yes, you can see it. So what is important, or what can you see here? The web page is the key part of the model. The box highlighted in orange. It represents the object of observation. On the left-hand side, you will see the bibliographic description with the following components. The collection, over here, provides the thematic classification and categorization. The website is the anchor to the timeless web in the World Wide Web. So it's, yes, like a domain is found here. And the snapshot forms the temporal reference to the website. And the whole part on the right side in blue is an object of observation in preserved form. So the web page is the central anchor point here, or our schema. So, and what, yeah. We achieved our short-term goal of publishing on GitHub early this morning. So that's one thing we can cross off the short-term list. And we will expand and refine the shackle shapes in the near future. And so maybe next year, we will implement parts of them in the linked data service. And of course, we will continue to discuss and work on DOVAC with our colleagues at the National Archives UK. And because I've speak I've been running to this presentation, I already finished my presentation now. And so that was our insight into our web archiving at the German National Library, and into our WASH data model, which we intend to use to support the data lifecycle within the overall process. We welcome any questions and suggestions, and Natanael is now also available for the Q&A section. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tracy. So we have 7 minutes for questions, and there was already a very lively discussion going on in the chat about very technical details about content negotiation. And I encourage people to continue that discussion at the URL where the program event is, where this talk is entered into the forum as an event, and there people can discuss the fine points of this. But there's one question in the chat. Are alternatives to harvesting now being considered in web archiving, such as push-based approaches similar to Index Now in the search engine domain? If you or your co-author have anything to say about
yes,
that.
Natanael will answer.
Hi, this is Natanael. You can't see me. I'm just sitting in the next room. Currently, we're not crawling in our new web archiving system. We're still crawling with the system provided by our external provider. And in the new crawling web archiving system, we plan to start crawling around next year. And I think such services, as we also know it from the Internet Archive, that you can just provide a URL to crawl it, are very nice. So far, we don't have them in our plan, but I consider them from now, every now and then.
Okay. There's another internal question. Could you please share any details of process for preparing metadata with the team who maintains the catalog? It's not in the chat. It's a question that I asked from our moderator team. Should I repeat it?
So for preparing metadata with the team who maintains the catalog. So, like what process of preparation are you thinking about?
Maybe Kat, you could specify that in the chat and I'll relay it. While we wait on that, I have another question. So I saw that you were also using DC terms, I think. And since I'm also involved with the DCMI with the Dublin Core Metadata Initiative, I just wanted to mention that in case that you need any more descriptors, then there's always a possibility to ask for an extension of the vocabularies maintained by the DCMI. And you could also, for example, think about defining application profiles and such, which are then like blessed by the DCMI, so that you can instruct people how to use your vocabulary.
Yeah, so we are currently using Dublin Core exactly because it is like the common denominator for such kind of metadata, and also because it's the fallback profile for OAI PMH interfaces. That was like those two motivations why we went to Dublin Core at this point. I think there's no reason to add specific web archiving properties to Dublin Core, since it should stay a general purpose vocabulary, and it should not like go in such broad fields like schema.org, for instance, which I think might cause troubles for the overall linked data system. And yeah, but one thing that I thought about was exactly the part of extent and media type, since for web archive content, it's quite important to have the byte size of the individual records and the VARC files. And I think these parts are under specified or might have some issues over there. And in the meantime, also Kat has specified her question about the metadata. So the question was, could you please share any details of process for preparing metadata with the team who maintains the catalog? And she specified it, were there any challenges incorporating your data into the catalog? So this is exactly the discussion we are having at the moment in the library, how we want to get the web archiving system in line with the catalog. And I think this is also the gist of Tracy's presentation, that the properties of the live hypermedia, hyperlinked web are completely different to those of a book. We tried to depict it in a nice picture. All what the image generation bots came up were, Tracy will show the picture, which is, in my eyes, the counter example of what web is not. The web is not possible to push in between two cardboard parts, but it always grows outside of these containers. And yeah, so this is the discussion we are currently doing. And as I see it, not so many libraries try to incorporate the web archive that deeply into the catalog as we try it. So yeah, we will see how far we get. Maybe they all decided it for good reason.
Right. Here's one last question. Although they aren't RDF based, I was wondering if standards like Memento or Wasapi inform thinking about what needs to be modeled in web archives. Memento and Wasapi.
Wasapi, I have heard of it, but Yes, Memento. Yeah, I think we will look. Thank you for this hint. We will look for the specific content concepts in those interfaces to extend our model. Also, the WASH repository, it's just the starting. I also hope that I can give some further progress presentation in April at the Web Archiving Conference. So this is just the starting point that we want to get into the discussion with the community to get an overview of what is there, because we think this is very important for linked data endeavors, that we use common terms, that we don't just mint our new terms to express what we want, but that we make the most possible reuse and model the data with terms that are there already so that others understand what we try to say in our graphs.
Those were very nice final words. Thank you. So this concludes the first session. We will now have a break of 15 minutes, and we will start with the next session, session 2, at past whatever hour you're in. Thank you very much and enjoy your break.